This is Anarchast.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. I have coming in from San Luis Obispo in California, Jason King. He's actually been doing Bitcoin across America. He's actually been running all the way from Miami, and he's planning on running to San Francisco. He's only about 200 miles away. He stopped in somewhere. Someone had Wi-Fi, and we got him on the line. We're going to talk about a lot of the things he does. He does something called Sean's Outpost as well. He tries to help a lot of homeless people. That's part of the reason why he's running across America, actually, is to raise awareness for both homelessness and for Bitcoin, and both at the same time. And of course, one of the big things that some people say about anarcho-capitalists is that we don't believe in charity. We're not very charitable. We're not very giving kind of people. And I think you'll see with Jason that is not the case whatsoever. And we're going to get into all of that. But of course, the first question I have to ask Jason is, how did you become an anarchist?
So, I think for most of my life, I wouldn't have considered myself an anarchist. I was a patriot, man. I was U.S. Army recon. I think I was pretty much as far from anarchism as you can get. And it wasn't really until I started Sean's Outpost and actually started helping the homeless and realizing just that all of these safety nets that that they have told us existed for all of our lives, is that's the reason why it was beneficial to tax us, truly didn't exist at all. And just how much persecution that I've received and other people have received just for helping the poor and downtrodden, really sort of started opening my eyes and pushing me down that path towards, well, what the hell is the government even here for? And I think that's why I'm an anarchist.
Yeah, the government doesn't, all the propaganda about how they help people. The government's number one cause of homelessness. There actually wouldn't be homelessness without government, and there's all kinds of reasons for that. We can go into all of that, including all the money they take out of the economy, the inflation, which makes people poorer, the housing regulations and zoning and things like that, which don't allow people to even make sort of makeshift houses, and they just have to end up living on the street. And then, of course, even worse, in many areas, and I know I think you're from Florida, or you've been in Florida, or that's where you kind of are based out of at the moment when you're not running. There's been some areas where they've actually outlawed homelessness. They've actually made it illegal to feed homeless people. So it's becoming quite clear that the government is not there to help the poor and the homeless.
Yeah, absolutely. It's in Pensacola, Florida, where Sean's Outpost's headquarters is it is actually illegal to be homeless. It's illegal for you to sleep in a public park with a tent. It's illegal for you to panhandle. It's illegal for you to bathe in a public area. And more so, the politicians there and across the South have started blaming the poor economy on the homeless, which is just, it's the most asinine concept you could possibly have. That the reason that there's no money is because of all the people that have no money, which is just really sick circular logic.
Yeah, the government's always making up all kinds of just crazy things, and then people get confused. They watch their TV, they listen to the government, and that's what the government tells them. And of course, they go to their government schools where they're not taught any of this sort of stuff. So a lot of people actually believe these sort of things. It's crazy. And quite amazing to me is what you've been doing. And we're going to talk a lot about Bitcoin. You're throwing Bitcoin in the Beltway Conference in June 19th to 22nd. I'm going to be there. Many past Anarchast guests are going to be there, including Cody Wilson, Jeffrey Tucker, I believe, is going to be there. Is that correct?
Yeah, and Carl Gray, who was just on the show, he'll be there as well. So. Yeah,
that's great. And what I found really amazing about you was you don't exactly have like that marathon runner's body or anything, and you just decide. I don't know how this came about. You tell us how it came about, but you ended up running from Miami to you're all the way in California now. You're on your way to San Francisco. You've got a big, large bus, big yellow and black bus, anarcho-capitalist colors there, and Bitcoin, and it says about running across America for the homeless. And it's also promoting Bitcoin, which is great. So tell us a little bit about this journey. That must be. Have you ever run that kind of distance before?
No, I mean not that kind of distance. I've been a distance runner my whole life. I ran track and field in high school, and I was in the Army and did competitive ruck marching and things like that. But you know, America likes a spectacle, and we have a huge homeless problem in America. You know, 1.5 million Americans are homeless every night. 3.6 million Americans will experience homelessness during the course of a year, and we're not insensitive people. You know, we do get a bad rap as anarchists that we don't care, but that's not true. You know, and what it's really is that most people don't realize how bad the problem is, because the government goes out of their way to hide the problem and pretend like, hey, there's nothing to see here, move on. So I wanted to start that conversation, and you know, doing something ridiculous like Forrest Gumping it across the whole country is a good way to, you know, get people's attention and be able to talk to people, and you know, have a outlet to be able to start that conversation.
Well, I'm just amazed. I was there. I've seen you at many conferences. I was at the Miami conference when you first left, and I'm amazed how fast you've done it as well. That was just a few months ago, as far as I can recall. And then I saw you, I think, in Austin as well. Another place just recently. Where were we just?
We were in LA there. Yeah.
Oh, right, LA. Yeah. I can't keep track of all these places, but just amazed at how you've done it. I remember when you first left in Miami, I was like, I don't think I'd make it out of the city. I don't know how you've done it. So how many like miles?
To die, yeah, totally.
Well, yeah, I'm sure you've seen some. You must have some stories along the way. If you have any, let us know. And also, like, what kind of distance have you been doing? Have you been doing it like every day a certain amount, or how has it been?
Pretty close. My daily average is 31.6 miles a day. Wow. You know, I'm not racing anybody, so there's not any, you know, any time I need to beat to do that distance. Yeah, I'm about 3,100 miles into a 3,217 mile journey, and I'm about 72 pounds lighter than I was when I saw you in Miami Beach.
Wow.
So yeah, so it definitely has its toll. I think the most interesting thing has been the fact that no matter how small the town is I go through, somebody knows about Bitcoin, and somebody wants to start that conversation. Somebody wants to come talk about Bitcoin. It'll just be like Hondo, Texas, which is just like middle of nowhere desert town. You know, multiple people come out to the bus. Hey, I just heard Andreas Antonopoulos on the Joe Rogan show. Can you tell me about Bitcoin? I think Bitcoin's going to be really cool. And I just, I feel the fact that it's that pervasive, and, you know, sort of the BFE parts of America, I think is fantastic. And I think that it shows that, you know, that Bitcoin's here, and it, you know, it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, it's great. And getting back to about people in the ANCAPs, anarcho-capitalists, not being charitable, I've seen the exact opposite. Down here in Acapulco, Mexico, in around September of last year, there was a major tropical storm that caused a lot of major flooding in the entire region. And didn't really affect me too much. The power was out for a day or something in this area around Acapulco Bay. But about 15 miles from here, down by the river, sounds like the guy from Saturday Night Live, but down by the river, this entire town got washed out. It was unbelievable. I couldn't believe how high the river had risen. It was at least minimum 30, 40 feet or higher above regular, and it just washed out this entire town. And I went on the internet, of course, and I said I was going to go out there, and I did. And I said if anyone wants to donate, and there was so many people donating with Bitcoin that we really kept this entire this village going, because there was no one. There was definitely no government. I was asking everyone out there. I'm like, guys, have you even heard from anyone from the government? They're like, no, and they're just standing there. Everything they had was gone. They're all standing there and just you know, a pair of shorts, and that was about it. A lot of them had some medical issues. A lot they're just standing in mud the entire time, so their feet were starting to open up, and they're getting infections and stuff like that. So the Bitcoin community raised enough money to keep that community alive until they could get back on their feet. Brought in a lot of food, water, medicine, and there was a lot of volunteers from here. We actually set up what was called an anarchist I forget what we called, anarchist recovery zone or something along those lines. And I've seen it all over the place. Almost any sort of charity. There's a lot of Bitcoin people donating to it. There was what was the most recent? There was a big, oh, the funny one was when Newsweek, or as I call it, Newspeak, looked into the phone book and found a guy by the name of Satoshi Nakamoto and said that he was the guy who created Bitcoin.
That's quality journalism. That's some quality journalism.
Yeah, yeah. I think they went out of business. That was supposed to be their relaunch of their magazine, and that was their big story, which was like the worst journalism I've ever seen in my life. And then I think they just shut down again. So it's great to see all these mainstream media go out of business. But the funny part about it was this guy had his life just turned upside down. Apparently he was like a model railroad sort of a guy, enthusiast, and he had this quiet life, and he was just, all of a sudden all the world's media is on his doorstep. And I think Bitcoin people donated tens of thousands of dollars to help him just to get through this time in his life where he's just been so affected by the mainstream media just attacking him.
Yeah. Like I said, I think that I have seen, similar to you, I think that if anything, the Bitcoin community, the anarchist community, the ANCAP community has been extremely supportive of real charity, real things where they know that that there's actually, you can actually verify the results. Mm-hmm. We're not particularly interested in just giving randomly to a cause, or we don't know what the money's going to be used for, But I had a similar situation to what you described, is that Pensacola actually had like a once-in-a-millennial storm where we had 26 inches of rain fell over 24 hours. And, I mean, it was just catastrophic. I mean, like, biblical level flooding. And we just, Sean's Outpost was very fortunate. We were one of the only homeless outreaches there that didn't get completely flooded out. So, like, the Red Cross was incapacitated, Waterfront Mission, sort of the mainstays there weren't there. FEMA wasn't there. So the next day, the only organization that was really in the streets was Sean's Outpost. And we just kind of put the word out, hey, this happened, if you guys want to support us. And I want to say we raised something like 37 Bitcoins in 24 hours. I mean, it was just like, it's an astronomical amount of money, because we do care. I think we just want, we just want to be able to verify what our money is going towards. We're tired of this, like, oh yeah, no, trust us, everything's going to be fine. We want a more granular level of knowing what the benefit is of donating to it. And I think that, if charities are very transparent in what they're doing, I think that it's just like we've both experienced, that you'll actually find a lot of compassion in the anarchist community.
Yeah, I agree with you. And thanks to the internet, and we used a site called, what was it called? Can't remember it off the top of my head. It was one of these sort of charitable sites that you can start up a charity very quickly, and there's so many of them now, and it's great, and you can actually see the real results happening in real time, and you can update it. It's so much better than these big monstrosities like the Red Cross, and of course up in during the New York hurricane there. There's this photo on the internet of the whole area was, this one area of New York State was in total ruins, and at the FEMA office, which is supposed to be the emergency government office, it said closed due to weather. And it's just very typical. And you bring up a great point. Actually, one of my favorite comedians, and a lot of people probably don't know about him. I only have a few really favorite comedians because they're so free market. Of course, there's George Carlin, there's Bill Hicks. The most recent one that I love is Doug Stanhope. But my most recent that I just love is a guy named Steve Hughes from Australia, and he's got a great bit on charity. I can't mimic him as well as he does it, obviously, but he basically says, people think, oh, that's terrible, you're giving this homeless person like $1. And you shouldn't do that because he's just going to buy alcohol with it. And Steve Hughes goes, well, what do you think I was going to do with it? and then he says, this is the typical sort of the old-fashioned, old-style people. They'll say, oh no, you shouldn't give it directly to them. What you should do is give us the money, and we'll make sure they get it.
Well, I love that drinking reference too, because like I say all the time, it's like, all of my friends that have houses drink, and like if there's any guy who needs a drink, it's the dude who doesn't have a roof over his head and is trying to get his life together, So I'm not as judgmental about that. But, we have, in the charity sector in the United States, we have kind of an impending apocalypse for nonprofits that I think most people aren't aware of is that, 91.7% of all U.S. nonprofits derive 100% of their funding either from tax-deductible donations, government subsidies, or direct government fees. That means if we're just to have a small shift in U.S. policy on taxation or a small shift in the authority of the U.S. government, 91% of the charities that we care about would cease to exist overnight. And people don't realize that because it's like the government's done a really good job of getting all of the, even effective charities, getting them, situated on the government tit, as it were, for the easy money. And literally overnight, if we have a major shift in policy, we're going to see a lot of the charities that we care about, a lot of charities that are doing good work are just going to go away if we don't start doing more direct action and start sort of changing the model where we're doing direct funding, it's not going through this government funnel, and people are donating because they want to help, not because it's a tax-deductible donation, because that's crap. And like literally, if a major corporation is donating $10 million a year and now it's no longer tax deductible, well, guess what they're not going to do? Give you the $10 million. And if that's your whole yearly budget, well, guess what? You're out of business. So there's a lot of, I'm a tech entrepreneur. I owned an ISP outside of Dallas, and sort of took part in the lean startups movement, and then coming into nonprofits has been a huge sort of wake-up call, because the whole industry doesn't really believe in iterative design. They don't really believe in keeping verifiable metrics in terms of what they're doing, and it just seems like a recipe for non-sustainability. And I really want to see a change. I really want to see more sort of direct action nonprofits being a lot more transparent about what they're doing.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wasn't aware of that, and there you go. It just goes to show the government doing things to make it so that these sort of things they say they're there for don't actually occur, which is a lot of charity being done. And of course, talking from the true, real ANCAP perspective, there's such a big difference between when you get taxed, which is stolen from, and then that money goes through a big bureaucracy, and a little bit of it comes out at the end, and it's given to some person. That's such a giant difference from if someone who has that money, it's not stolen from them originally, if they choose to give that money to some person, it's night and day, the dynamics, because you really have that, it brings the humanity back into things, because I just saw a person on the internet, he just gave this homeless guy $1,000, and then he rented an apartment for him for a year. We'll see how that works out. I don't know how that's going to work out, but the interaction was just so much different than how it would have been doing it the statist way, which is a guy gets robbed, he's very angry about it, obviously. Then this person who has some problems or whatever, they take this money, and a lot of them just take it because, not all, but a lot, just because they can. And so they kind of get sort of addicted to this sort of a welfare, which actually doesn't, and because it keeps going on for years and years, and in some cases generations, these people never learn how to support themselves or anything, and they feel this entitlement to it. It's just totally wrong the way it's done through statism.
I can actually pinpoint the moment where sort of the curtain was pulled back and everything started to unravel for me. There's a homeless lady that we were helping who came down with Guillain-Barré disease, which is it's a terrible disorder where basically your nerve synapses stop firing and you get paralyzed, basically from the neck down. And so this was a woman who was out of doors, had no shelter, was living in an old boxcar, and now all of a sudden she's like a 30-year-old woman who's incapacitated, living in an old boxcar in the woods. So that's a whole host of problems. So Sean's Outpost is like, well, we'll keep getting you fed, but let's get you, this is exactly what Medicaid's supposed to be for. This is exactly what, we're supposed to be able to go get social workers and they're going to help you out with this. Well, we got a social worker to fill out her forms for her, and they're like, well, we're going to emergency rush this through. And the emergency rush was like, it was more than 3 months before she got any kind of aid. And this is a person who's literally just dying in the woods. And every lawyer I talked to was like, oh, you guys got a response back in 3 months? That's amazing, And we're sitting here like, she could really just be dead. I mean, if we weren't here, she would probably be dead. And they were just like, 3 months is like, that's just lightning fast, which means that, you know, the mean is way worse than that. And then just the huge, biggest irony is that, you know, she couldn't get a bank account. We went to several banks, and there was a huge issue with getting her an ID, and we finally got the state of Florida to issue her just a, you know, a basic ID. But banks wouldn't issue her a bank account because a huge part of getting a bank account is proving residency, and she's homeless, you know, so she doesn't have a static address that she can use. So she was failing every credit check based on residency. So she couldn't get a bank account. So the government had to issue her a check. And we were like, okay, hey, Mr. Banker, like, you know, you're in bed with the U.S. government anyway. Can you please cash this check? And no bank would cash the check because they used like Equifax verification for check systems, and this homeless lady would fail that verification based on residency. So it's like, a bank wouldn't cash a check issued by the U.S. government. And so we eventually had to go to like a check cashing place, and they charged like 6%, like a usurious fee on it, just so she could get some money just to get out, you know, so that she wasn't on the street anymore. And just firsthand experiencing just the inefficiency of just how terrible it was, and how sort of all of the, you know, the gatekeepers were like, wow, what a great story, 3 months, and then, you know, and then they wouldn't cash your check. That's fantastic. You got so lucky with that. And I was just like, this is fucked. This is just a completely wrong system, you know?
Yeah, I'm sure she was feeling really lucky for those 3 months out in the woods.
Oh, great, you know?
Wow, that was great. This system's really meeting the needs of the people that supposedly is there.
I paid taxes now.
Yeah. Unbelievable. And one thing I do want to say, I want to bring this up because I don't hear it said very often, and I think it is something that I believe in, and I'd like to hear more opinions on it. And it is that I hear a lot of people, now we've been talking about charity, and I agree that 100%, I've done it myself numerous times, including that time in Acapulco, that you know, if you see someone in dire need, you do everything you can to help. There's no doubt about it. Like, it's just, that's just human beings. Like, if you don't want to do that, I don't know what you would do if you see someone who's literally almost dying and you don't help them. But I think it can go a little bit to the other extreme too, where a lot of people go, oh, everything should be charity. Everyone should just get everything. You know, everyone should be taken care of through these charities. And you see a lot of richer people say, oh, I'm going to give, you know, most of my wealth to charity. Well, actually, I think that's not the greatest thing to do in general. I think wealth and capital is very important. And if you just give it all away, and a lot of that will just get mostly, it will save the people at the time who it's saving, but it won't be creating new capital. So we won't even have wealth in the future to continue to do those things. So I think there is a little bit of a balance there. But I'm 100% in support of anyone who feels the need for whatever reason with their own money to give it, if they want to someone else to help them if they want to. And I totally have no problem with that. I just wanted to point out that I think it's more than just charity. I think we have to be also building and continue to build wealth in order to have charities.
I agree with you completely, and I actually think that there's a lot of it kind of leaves the realm of charity and goes into sort of social entrepreneurship, right? Where you do things like you utilize free market economics to benefit this class of people. You teach them skills. We do this at Satoshi Forest, which is our homeless sanctuary in Pensacola. You know, we teach organic farming, we teach construction techniques, we teach life skills, things that they can then go around, use in the market, create their own wealth, and then if they choose to, you know, pull themselves out if it's available to them. But I
thought public schools were there to train everyone to do things that were useful and productive.
Man, public schools is so. I know that we agree on this point. I've got 3 children. All of my children are unschooled, and I just the public school. It's literally, it's just teaching people to think that prison is a okay place to be. It's like, no, it's not that bad, man. It's great, So we had unschooled from the start, but my daughter, when she was about the age for 2nd grade, was like, look, all my friends are in public school. I would like to go to public school to be with my friends. And we're like, you know what? If that's your choice, if you're choosing, did you want to go? We'll try it out. We'll let you go. She went to a charter school, and literally she was reading at an 8th grade level in 2nd grade. And she comes home crying, and it's because the librarian told her she couldn't check out an eighth grade book because she wasn't. The librarian told her that there's no way she could read it. So I went in and I was like, "Well, did you actually ask her if she could read the book?" And they're like, "Well, no, because she's in second grade." So we had her read the book out loud. I think it was a Harry Potter book or something, and she read it, and the librarian was still like, "Well, our policy is that this is age inappropriate." And I'm like, "Do you care about learning, or do you care about policy?" And then that was it. That was the last day, and then we just pulled her out, and she's been unschooled, homeschooled since then. So
unbelievable.
They don't care anything about learning. They don't care anything about teaching. They care about indoctrination is basically what they care about.
Yeah, so. And conforming. And I've heard more and more now with this Common Core in the U.S. that they're trying to take away grades and everything because they don't want anyone to feel like they're not as equal with everyone else. So there's no need to learn.
Not the American populace is all it is. It's just trying to create a lower common denominator, and so that nobody will fight back. So that no one will question anything. And it's why we take so much hate as a homeless group, because like the government actually needs this class of outcasts so they can be like, you better stay in line or you don't want to end up like these people because everybody hates those people. And then if you're like, well, these are people too, they're just human beings. They're like, well, you can't call them human beings like that, because then people won't be afraid of being homeless and then they will start questioning us. So I would have never guessed that. I would have never, as a business person, I never had any interactions with law. I never had any problems at all, as an entrepreneur. I know that's not particularly a normal thing. I think most people do have interactions with the government. But I would have never really not bought into the lie if I wouldn't have started being a homeless advocate, and then just seeing just like the gross reaction from every level of government to helping other people from a private organization standpoint, not asking for anybody's permission, not trying to go beg for a grant, just saying, here's a problem, I'm going to fix it because this is something I want to do, and just seeing the huge backlash and how they just, strike out at you, really just sort of, it just showed their hand as to like, how much they hate this and how much they actually need that class of people to try to keep the rest of the population in line.
Yeah, it's typical. We just wrote at the Dollar Vigilante an article called "Who Will Neglect the Roads?" And there's been a bunch of people in the U.S. that their governments are all failing now. They're all collapsing. Places like Detroit are a good example. And they don't have the funds to do a lot of the things that they used to be able to do, like fill in potholes and things like that. Yeah. And a lot of people have started on their own, in their own neighborhood, just filling in potholes. And in numerous instances, the government or the police or some bureau rat will come around and like fine them for doing that, because that's, they're not supposed to be doing that. The government, the mask is coming off of it so quickly, especially as it's starting to devolve now.
Detroit is such a great example too, right? Because because they're so broke as a city right now that they don't have these basic, infrastructure needs that, that we associate with municipal governments. So what's happened there is there's actually this flourishing of entrepreneurs that are like, oh, we will fix all this shit. And so there are going, and you actually see this resurgence, and government's not a part of any of it. And so they don't have this historical marker where they can be like, well, of course, we took your tax dollars and we did this. And they can't even get on board with it at all because they're not there. It's literally just entrepreneurs fixing the situation. And it's just like, that's just hopefully opening up the eyes of all the citizens there and all the people that are like, well, hey, it is getting better, and it has nothing to do with government. So why the hell are we paying government, So
absolutely, it's really, and this is going to continue. This is not going away. There's not going to be any financial recovery in the U.S. It's baked in the cake. It's going to be a collapse of the U.S. dollar over the coming years. And so that's why it's really important to get out this message about what we're talking about, that there is free market options that are much better. They're much cheaper, they're much more efficient, they're much more caring and actually care about what they're trying to do. For example, in Detroit, there's actually a private policing agency called, I believe, Force something. Do you know this one?
I've heard of it. I'm not exactly familiar with the name of it, but I have heard that, like on Free Talk Live and stuff, they do have a private policing situation there.
Yeah, I watched a video on it, and it's amazing. They have a history of like decades, and they've never had anyone ever get hurt the entire time, not their own private police people, not you could call them security, not even the criminal nor the victims have ever gotten hurt. They've found nonviolent ways to solve every issue, and it's very cheap. And they actually give away, and this goes back to charity, they're making so much money, mostly from corporate clients and quite wealthy clients, that they give away their service to the people who can't afford it. So this is just how the free market would work. It would be so beautiful. I just can't wait until we get rid of this anachronistic, evil system of statism.
Well, we got to starve them out, man, which is why Bitcoin is so important. It's like, it's such a simple thing, but, Tatiana Moroz has that great Bitcoin jingle, and it's like, don't take away the money, don't give up your money, use Bitcoin whenever you can, and it's like, it's true. It's like, every little millibit counts. And, yeah, that's why I'm so passionate about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. Yeah,
it's great. And you're, of course, doing Bitcoin in the Beltway in June. I'll be there. Why don't you tell people a little bit about what's going to be going on there and details on how to go?
So Bitcoin in the Beltway, I lived in Washington, D.C. for about a decade. It's where I met my wife. And so, it's a city I'm very familiar with. And, it's a city the government is pervasive in every part of it. And latter part of last year, we started seeing things like the Bitcoin Senate hearings and things like that, and the government is trying to figure out how they could come down and clamp down on Bitcoin, which we all know ultimately it's not really a possibility. Like the internet looks at as censorship as damage and just routes around, and anything they try to impose, literally we would just route around them. But I think that ultimately, in sort of what is Adam Kokesh's thing, a civilized dismantling of the federal government, I think it's important for us to have an open dialogue and kind of explain just everything that is Bitcoin and have the strong narrative that's an honest narrative of what Bitcoin is. And anyone that is involved in U.S. policymaking or Senate or congressional hearings or anything like that, to have a forum where they can hear, the truth about what's going on in Bitcoin, not just what, popular media says about it. So that's why, I sort of took the flag on, with Elizabeth Plachey on doing this conference in Washington, D.C., so that we could have a really great forum there where we had a lot of great speakers, a lot of the brightest minds in Bitcoin speak about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. And anyone from the Hill that wants to come listen to it can actually, listen to the truth about Bitcoin instead of just what they hear through Fox News.
That's great. Why don't you give people the website for that or any other information as well? Give them for Sean's Outpost and anything else you're doing so that people can follow up and find you on the internet.
Sure. So the conference is Bitcoin in the Beltway. It's bitcoinbeltway.com. It's June 20th through 22nd at the DC Downtown Renaissance. And then, yeah, my organization is Sean's Outpost, and that's SEANS outpost.com. I guess that's pretty much it. BitcoinAcrossAmerica.com. I'll be finishing up June 7th at the BitPay offices in San Francisco, California. Yeah, that's pretty much me, man.
That's great. Good luck with the final leg of your run. I'm sure you're looking forward to getting that over with.
I'm looking forward to getting off the road, man. It's been a while. I've got kids to raise.
That's great. And we've talked about so many great things today. And if you're sitting there and you're wondering, how can I sort of help towards these changes? Maybe there's not anything in particular you can do at this moment in time. Just share this video, share these sort of things. That's one way that you can make a difference and get this information out there, because this system is going to change with or without us. And the more that people understand how an actual free market system would work and how much better it is, the better the transition to the system will be. So just share this video and subscribe to us on anarchast.com. And that's it for Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. Peace, love, and anarchy.
This is Anarchast.